What inspires your leadership journey?
I grew up in rural parts of Kenya, very specifically Kericho, which is in the islands. And that reminds me very often, I wasn't just the girl who took the milk to the collection center.
What makes a business fit for AECF support? What do you look for?
We must be able to see a future that is going to be sustained by commercial capital. We exist to make markets and systems work for the poor. Within innovation, we want to see replicability because for us, we are looking at bringing up as many businesses as possible, and this is adopted across different markets. AECF choose to intentionally focus on women economic empowerment. In 2018, we launched our first gender lens investing strategy with the support of Global Affairs Canada. Coming on up to now, 2026, we've been ramping up our women-facing portfolio. We have a portfolio of almost $50 million that is focused on supporting women-led, women-owned, women-benefiting businesses.
Welcome to the AECF podcast. Across Africa, enterprise is everywhere. From agribusinesses connecting farmers to markets, to solar companies powering rural homes, to young innovators building solutions for underserved communities. But many of these businesses with the greatest potential still struggle to access the financing they need to grow. They are often too early for bankers, too risky for traditional investors, and too small for large-scale capital. That is the gap AECF was created to close. Since 2008, AECF has been supporting innovative, commercially viable, and socially impactful enterprises that reach rural and marginalized communities across Africa. Today, we explore what AECF is, why it exists, and how enterprise can drive inclusive and lasting impact across the continent. To help us unpack this, I am delighted to welcome Victoria Sabula, the Chief Executive Officer of AECF. Victoria leads AECF's work to advance a prosperous, enterprising, and resilient Africa, bringing experience in development, access to finance, governance, risk, and institutional growth. Victoria, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
And to set the context for today's conversation, you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and what inspires your leadership journey.
What inspires my leadership journey? I grew up in rural parts of Kenya, very specifically Kericho, which is in the islands. And you would find my younger self walking to the road in the morning to a collection point of either the private sector milk processor or the savings and loan cooperative that my mother had chosen, to be the off-taker of her 4 liters to 7 liters of milk. And that reminds me very often that I wasn't just the girl who took the milk to the collection center. It was actually about the dairy value chain and collection centers and aggregation that supported better pricing at the cooperative level, but also really a close-by processor that was co-located next to the farmers. And that meant income for households like ourselves. And I go back to rural parts of Kenya and a lot of the rural parts of Africa today, and I see so many of young girls and young boys like myself, and I ask the question, what truly does their future look like? What does unlocking their potential look like? What does offering opportunity for them look like? And for the reason that I've had the privilege of working with the private sector, I know that the solution is pushing as much of private sector investments to our rural parts as much as is possible, because that means jobs, it means market linkages, and it means diversified livelihoods, and it just means transformation. Yeah.
Well, that's early childhood. Sounds very much similar to mine, growing up in rural Kenya. And for listeners who may be hearing about AECF for the first time, how would you introduce the organization, its purpose, and the role it plays in Africa's enterprise and development landscape?
Yeah. So the AECF was set up in 2008, launched at the World Economic Forum. The Commission of Africa, led by Tony Blair at the time, thought that it was important to think about a different way of funding development initiatives in Africa, and more specifically was catalyzing private sector investments, because it was said then, and now evidenced, given the shift that has happened in the development space, that aid was not enough to solve for the grand development challenges of the time. Today, they are the same. So many people continue to live in poverty. And AECF was set up to mobilize public and philanthropic capital, and for that capital to be utilized to de-risk for private investments to come into the sectors and value chains that are deemed to be most promising for Africa's rural and marginalized communities. AECF is set up to take on high-risk, innovative businesses that have potential for scale but struggle to access capital from commercial financiers that are looking for traditional rates of return. We look at businesses as gems that are poised for greatness, but for the reason of their risk level, they are unable to attract capital from the commercial funder. But we provided that de-risk capital, that early market risk capital, they are able to go on their growth journey and be able to crowd in to their businesses capital that will sustain them over the long term. And we focus really on early stage and growth stage businesses. And they must be businesses that are willing to push products and services to rural communities. We exist to make market systems work for the poor. We exist to push the private sector to places and spaces they otherwise wouldn't go. But for the reason of the incentive of patient capital, for the reason of the incentive of technical advisory support and investments facilitation, they get to be willing to go into the farthest of places and serve the underserved communities.
You mentioned capital, and there's a staggering figure that the AFDB recently announced, a $400 billion financing gap in Africa's market. Do you think we'll ever fill the gap? And what is AECF doing towards
that figure,
bridging the gap?
Yeah, that figure is shared and used many a times. But think about it, that over 50% of SMEs across Africa do not have access to enough finances for purposes of growing their business. They face collateral requirements or demands of over 151% of that which they are seeking to borrow. There is just so much that actually works against the SMEs accessing finance. Will we fill that gap? I think there is so much, matters, structural barriers, the regulatory environment. When you think about just the currency issues and the volatility across the different markets that we operate in, you sometimes are making a little, of progress, and then the kwacha, the naira, the Kenya shilling. There is just so much that gets to happen that kind of holds back the very progress. But there's so much effort that is ongoing. And I think that there are a few things that, we are doing, other ecosystem players are doing to actually see that this capital gets to be unlocked. And one of it is actually blending finance. So we're taking capital again, from the public, from the philanthropic organizations, and using that as fast loss, using that as to build credit enhancement mechanisms and to design vehicles that crowd in private capital. Over the last few years, there is a lot that is going on among the multilaterals, among the foundations, that is actually supporting blended finance. I think over time, this may support the bridging of the finance gap that exists for SMEs. But there is also a lot of effort that is going into investments readiness. So at the AECF, we have both the AECF Academy and the AECF Advisory Studio, which supports the reading of businesses. And we are solving for the gap between the sophisticated investor and the naive entrepreneur, and getting businesses to get to a place where they have data, they have information that actually can be taken in and a decision made. So as you know, there is a lot of argument that there isn't just sufficient investor-grade data in the sub-Sahara that allows for that investor that wants to cut out a 5 million, 10 million ticket to a business to do so with confidence. And ours then is to do that investor readiness and be able to have demonstration effect come into place for the later on financiers to be signaled that, hey, you know what, these businesses are actually credible. They can be able to take on 1 million and 2 million. We've seen them gain revenue traction. And now, you know, as in we have a business that you can be able to take on to the maturity stage.
Great. And you mentioned earlier on that business need more than catalytic funding. For AECF, what more do you give the businesses? Walk us through how AECF works with them all the way to them being ready to take up commercial capital.
So on one part is actually technical advisory support, and we do this in two ways. One is pure technical assistance that just looks at the operational mechanics of our business, and we look at matters financial management, we look at marketing, supply chain management, business model canvas, things that a lot of the entrepreneurs, we work with locally led businesses a lot, and most of them, you know, have not come to a place of determining that, you know, for fundraising, you need to be clear, are you raising debt, are you raising equity, why are you raising those, and what are you needing to put in place as far as your financials go, or is it sufficient for you to have just an accountant? And within the technical assistance, for example, we do the roving experts, the shared resources, so that the SME is able to access our CFO level expert to support them to put their finance house in order, and that way they package their business and are able to go on and borrow from other financiers. Our investments readiness and investments facilitation work is really about matchmaking. It's about finding the equity investors, the debt investors, the commercial banks that are offering working capital facilities within the ecosystem, be it those that are more focused on agri, because our portfolio has both agri and energy businesses, and financial intermediaries as well. And we do all of those things of, data rooms and pitch decks. We kind of do the roll up the sleeves type of work, ensuring that our businesses know to turn up right for themselves, because they have done really the harder work. And sometimes it is just the gap of knowing how to put the information together, knowing who is the right partner for your stage of growth, knowing what type of capital is appropriate, what size of capital. Some of our businesses come and they are looking for $5 million. within 2 years, and we tell them, oh, that would be a 5-year target. For now, 1 million really seems, based on the track record, your customer validation, your revenue traction so far. Sometimes there is a mismatch between the ambition that the entrepreneur has and the reality that could be in the capital world, and we work to bridge those worlds. And we've seen more than 30% of our businesses go ahead and crowd in further capital into their businesses at much larger ticket sizes. We do the sub 2 million ticket, which means that we provide the small ticket that is administratively heavy to administer, but it is a work that must be done in order to pull up businesses from their early success into their sustained growth level. And so we do 500K, we will do that 700K. So we do 100 all the way to 2 million. But thereafter, these businesses are actually able to get that 3 million, that 5 million. That doesn't come easy, though. In fact, what we've noted is that a lot of our businesses just go on and get the 1 million and maybe 1.5, and it is just the very few that go on to get the 5 million or the 10 million. But also, that is really our model. It is really that out of every 10, we hope that 2 will rocket and do the best that they can and offer the impact of jobs and market linkages to a broad set of the rural and marginalized communities that we are seeking to support.
And speaking of businesses, well, it said that approximately 7 in 10 people in Africa are into entrepreneurship. And what makes a business fit for AECF support? What do you look for and determine that this business is worth walking the journey with?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one is commercial viability, because we come very early on, when the business has been able to demonstrate the early adopters, they have revenue traction. It may not be repeat revenue, because we come in post-revenue, but you don't need to be post-profit. But we must be able to see a future that is going to be sustained by commercial capital. So it needs to be a business that is viable, which means that all of the things that really speak to where is the market, where is the customer, is there capital that is actually going to be available to carry this on. So commercial viability, then innovation. And innovation here doesn't mean that it is new. It just means that it is something that is offering a solution to underserved communities in a way that's different than has been done before, because we are always seeking to solve a problem. We are looking to close a particular gap. So think about what we have done, for example, in the PayGo. Very early on in 2013, 2014, we decided to bank on the very early entrepreneurs in the PayGo market, solving for last mile customers on electricity connection. That is currently a multi-million-dollar industry. It was an innovation that was looking at pay-as-you-go, that 50 cents, that $1 is actually possible to take as what a household is affording to pay over a period of 12 months, over a period of 24 months. So innovation. And within innovation, we want to see replicability, because for us, we are looking at bringing up as many businesses as possible, and then the gazelles, as now we don't talk unicorns, can be able to go on faster, and this is adopted across and replicated across different markets. The other thing is systemic change. We want, because our capital is patient, we want to think about how is this going to change how the system works. So for financial inclusion, when we are working with financial intermediaries, we're asking the question, how is this going to change? How women will access finance, how young people will access finance, how small and micro businesses will access, not from an individual perspective, but on how the systems work to intentionally and validly include these types of excluded businesses or persons. For us, the other thing that we look at the AECF and is our primary work is impact. How is this transforming lives? How is it increasing incomes? How is it diversifying livelihoods? How is it creating meaningful and dignified jobs? How are we going actually to speak about this in another 5 years, in another 10 years? Will communities have moved from an income of $50, $100 to $1,000 to $2,000 to $3,000? So the net benefit that ends up being retained and experienced at the community level needs to be one that's really transformative in nature. And you will go to South Sudan, and we are working on the sesame value chain, the honey value chain. We are in Mozambique working in the off-grid solar market. But all of that really is about we are solving for jobs. We are solving for extending economic growth opportunities for people who, for no reason of their own, are trapped in poverty. But with the right private sector solutions, we will be able to unlock the very potential that the resources that are in and around them already have.
Thank you. So, Victoria, you mentioned something that's at the heart of Africa, our women. Across the continent, women are running entrepreneurship, which accounts for over 90% of employment in the continent. How is AECF catering to that special group of entrepreneurs?
From very early on, AECF chose to intentionally focus on women economic empowerment. In 2018, we launched our first gender lens investing strategy with the support of Global Affairs Canada. 2020 coming on up to now, 2026, we've been ramping up our women-facing portfolio. One is we have a portfolio of almost $50 million that is focused on supporting women-led, women-owned, women-benefiting businesses. We are looking at supporting the woman who owns a business, the woman who leads a business that is benefiting women, but also that business that is male-owned, but whose business model is really oriented toward giving economic opportunity to Africa's women. Across Kenya, South Sudan, Nigeria, Benin, and Burkina Faso, we are working with anchor firms who are, scaling in grower and outgrower models with 80% of the participants being women. We are working with savings and we're working with cooperative unions to assure that they are building out systems and processes and models that actually, integrate women as the primary as the primary client. We have worked a lot in supporting the organization of producer groups into economically viable units that are primarily, led or constituted of women. We are keen to see that women become proper economic actors, moving women from marginalized parts of different value chains, whether you talk rice, you talk groundnut, you talk honey, you talk bean value chain. We want to see them not just be laborers. We want them to play at the level of aggregating, is in running and managing collection centers. We want them to be the entrepreneurs that are engaging at the at level that really get to assure them of as much benefit as possible from an economic perspective, and also moving them really to rightfully make decisions. And we are doing this through pushing the productive asset agenda. I was just in Mombasa, most recently speaking to a woman who owns a business in Lamu, Kenya. And she's been working in the fisheries value chain. We then supported her through capital and advisory support to acquire a mid-sized boat. And that has just changed her life. She no longer has to figure how to move her product from, the island where she gets to fix to the main island of Lamu. It has eased her access to market. It has improved her price because she doesn't have to think too much about post-harvest loss, because we also get to solve for cooling while at it. And she actually gets to hire people who go to sea and come back. This is an asset that empowers her to be able to make the decisions that are right for her business. And that is really what empowerment at the end of the day looks like. When women are able to access productive resources that allow for them to convert that into proper income, their families get to live better, and they get to also support a lot of their communities through jobs, but also demonstrating that it is actually possible to play in the value chains that have previously been predominantly led by men.
Thank you. So over 16 years experience supporting enterprises, over 26 countries across Africa. What are some of the lessons AECF has learned about what it takes to empower a business and move it to the next level?
The privilege that we have had, and I say this and feeling very honored for the people that actually thought that there is need for a special purpose vehicle to exist in Africa that gets to mobilize public and philanthropic capital and use it rightly to de-risk for private capital to come into their sectors that are most promising for Africa's people. That early dream has actually led to the support of over 650 businesses, impacted over 36 million people. And here we are talking about direct impact. Has gone on to mobilize private capital at a multiple of 3.4. For every dollar that we have deployed as the AECF, we have been able to crowd in another 3.4 in additional capital to the businesses. And it's such a mixed portfolio, and there is so much learnings that come as a result. And if I am to think about those that are to prioritize, I am to prioritize because there are really many. One is extending the ecosystem of investor-ready businesses is hard work. It's hard work. It requires that patient capital that is willing to create markets, that is willing to build track records, that is willing to do the hard work of proving of concepts. In the absence of that capital, there is no way growth is going to be experienced, especially when you're looking at surfacing solutions that are new and haven't been tested. Right now, we are talking about climate adaptation. We don't know what models will work on climate information services or that will support the adoption of particular technologies by smallholder farmers. So we need capital that is willing to test that. Everyone is always looking for the ready bride, the perfect business, triple B minus. Where are these going to come from if the harder work is not going to happen? in the type of capital as well as the advisory support. That we need to do the parenting. There being suitors in, commercial financiers means that there has to be somebody who is reading, the bride. And it's been valuable to actually get to see that these businesses transition, yes, but there is still a lot that is yet to be done because there is not enough players that are doing the building work and the reading work. We are increasing in number, but there is more that is needed. So I think the lesson there is there is not enough that is going into the reading of businesses. Number two is tenure financing and revenue-linked structures are still not available at the level that businesses really need. You cannot go and tell a rice miller that I will give you a facility that you will need to pay on a monthly basis when their crop cycle speaks something that is different. So aligning the instruments and the financing products that are, in the market to the needs of the businesses is something that we have continued to push. As the AECF, our type of capital allows us to do that because we are able to blend. And it allows for more and more businesses to work within their own revenue cycles, even as they access or as they look for capital. I think the other lesson that we have as the AECF is that, yes, there's a lot of arguments relating to grants and the possibility of them distorting the market. We argue that we level the playing field. We do not distort the market. And there is need for more capital that actually levels the playing field, giving a chance to business models and entrepreneurs that in the absence of a capital provider that is going to take that risk, we are going to have so much of the resources that we have remain just at a place that they are not unlocked for growth. You think about what we have done across different markets, whether it is in the coconut and mango value chain in Mozambique. There was absolutely no factory that was located in Inyambane in Mozambique that was processing the mango, drying the mango and the coconut nearer the farmers. The moment that happened, the farmers retained much of the value within their own community. There were aggregators and other small and medium businesses that actually came to sit under this bigger processor. But AfriFuta in Mozambique came to us at a point where there was just a lot that existed. What was there was indeed that there is sufficient volumes of mango, there is sufficient volumes of the coconut, and they are actually having to find their way to far-off markets in their raw form. But there is a market for dried fruits in the Netherlands. So ours was actually to bridge that potential and the opportunity that existed. And as a result, 6,000 farmers, get to benefit. But most importantly, really, is that the value chain gets to do much more for the community than it would have had there not been private sector investments that came into that district. Maybe the other one that I can think about is really about the balance of incentives. Private sector will always be in the pursuit of profit. And there is need for somebody to incentivize them to be able to do the harder work, to be able to go into the farthest of geographies. If you think about our work in Liberia, there are times in the year when the city gets cut off for the reason of of rains, or rather communities are not able to access the main city for a particular period of time. As an entrepreneur, you're being asked to go into areas that means that logistics are very expensive. Somebody should be able to take that logistics cost earlier on, as you get actually to iterate and get to figure what would be the best distribution model or channel for those solar products that are critical. As we think about the lack of bankable projects across Africa, for us, it is more the energy, the agri sector, and also financial inclusion. It goes back again to there is need for more risk to be taken by all types of investors. I almost feel like everybody needs to come just a little lower, and exercise a little more patient. And hence the reason why I really emphasize the place of credit enhancement mechanisms, guarantees that allow for commercial banks to do more, grants and interest-free facilities that players like ourselves offer to take on that early market risk and ensure that the early success demonstrated by businesses get to yield over time in actually sustainable growth. Technical assistance facilities that get to walk the journey of project preparation with SMEs. So there is possibility of building more bankable businesses. It is just working on different types of solutions that get to incentivize the money to be able to go into these businesses.
Let me take you back a bit.
Yeah.
There's a term you've mentioned over and over: catalytic patient capital.
Yeah.
For some of our viewers who've never heard of that,
Yeah.
what does it mean?
Catalytic capital is really capital that does the following, okay? It works at creating markets, taking on early market risk, and catalyzing here means that it does the early work that gets to crowd in investments that otherwise wouldn't come in. And that is a work that AECF has been doing for the last 18 years. It also solves for the bridging of the gap that exists for the reason of structural barriers, for example, in collateral. So catalytic capital will demand for much lower collateral cover. It will, take on unsecured positions, or it would actually provide, resources on the basis of maybe just facility agreements and directors' guarantees, and focuses a lot on impact. Because once impact is demonstrated and then the commercial viability is proven and confirmed, then the other capital gets to come in. It also addresses what I have spoken to earlier, issues relating to longer term tenures and revenue-linked financing. A traditional financier would like you to pay on a monthly, on a quarterly basis, for example, and you could be working in the maize value chain where you harvest once in a year. Catalytic capital allows for, a financier to be able to work with a commercial maize farmer or a maize miller on the basis of just how the revenue pattern of that particular value chain gets to work. So it kind of covers for the risk that is attendant to the financing of particular size of SMEs, particular value chains that are high risk in nature, yet they still have very high potential if the right patience is applied. So think of patience, think of crowding in and the incentivizing of other financing to come into the SMEs over the course of time. Yeah.
Well
It does the harder work, kind of. Yeah.
Well put. As we close, Victoria, I would like us to look ahead. When you think about the future of Africa, what does more enterprising, resilient, and inclusive Africa look like?
So we most recently at the AECF have evolved our strategy, and we are now a multi-instrument platform where we are servicing the early stage types of innovations and business through AECF Core with grants, returnable grants, depending especially on returnable grants because we want the funding to go the longer mile. On the other side is AECF Capital that is pushing on concessional debt and supporting businesses that have already demonstrated traction, have repeat revenue, have validated customers, and now assuring that they are having the capital at the right volumes and also the right instrument. But really, in totality, looking at the region, we need to have the right capital with the right terms and conditions for every business wherever they are, that the micro businesses must be able to access affordable capital in the most fair of ways. They cannot continue paying 30% and 60%, and it means building the strength of financial intermediaries to service these micro businesses in a way that assures availability of finance, access to the finance, and affordability of the finance. For small businesses, it is really getting the capital that will be able to allow them to grow. They are too small for microfinance, too big for commercial banks. How do we stretch the microfinance institutions to do more? But how do we incentivize the commercial banks to lower their ticket sizes and work more with the small businesses? And indeed, how do we broaden portfolios so that they are inclusive in nature? They are bringing in the sectors that service a lot of the underserved populations, agriculture being one of them. It continues to be underfinanced. Yes, majority of the people in sub-Saharan Africa, between 70 and 90%, in the different countries are operating and actually getting their everyday survival from this sector. Energy is an enabler. We must find a way of incentivizing financial institutions, financial intermediaries to lend to this particular market. It also means that knowledge to be able to credit assess companies that are in the energy sector and are servicing, different types of clients. So right financing for the right business at the right ticket with the right terms and conditions.
So thank you, Victoria. It was a pleasure having you on today's episode. Today, we have been reminded that behind every enterprise AECF supports is a bigger story. A farmer reaching better markets, a young person finding work, a householder accessing clean energy, a woman entrepreneur growing her business, and a community becoming more resilient. That is the power of enterprise development, and perhaps the happy ending we are working towards, an Africa where great ideas do not remain small because financing was out of reach. It has been a pleasure having you with us. Until the next time, from our guest Victoria Sabula and yours truly, thank you for watching.